In the small Somerset village of Sidcot, near Winscombe, there was once a man people remembered as more than a cattle doctor. His name was George Beacham, and according to local legend, they called him a conjurer. He was said to have worn a red cap, carried a staff, and kept books of magic, the kind of man neighbours might turn to when animals sickened and ordinary remedies failed. But when George came to the end of his life, he left one final instruction. He did not want to be buried in consecrated ground. His wish was ignored.
Summer's a gift. The gift of days that last a little longer. A brighter state of mind. So gift yourself a new Kia at the Kia Summer Sticker Sales Event. With specially tagged vehicles including the Sorrento, Sportage, Carnival, as well as the Niro Hybrid. All backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. So the gift of summer can keep on giving for summers to come. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. Event ends 7/6/26. See dealer for warranty details.
For a small business owner, every day is full of surprises. Some great, some not so great. Like when a client cancels their order at the last minute. But here's a surprise you will like. Progressive provides small business owners with 30 customizable coverage options to help keep their business going strong. So go ahead, surprise yourself. Get a quote in as little as 8 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates and third-party insurers. Coverage is not available in all states or for all vehicles and coverage selections.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
For a small business owner, every day is full of surprises. Some great, some not so great. Like when a client cancels their order at the last minute. But here's a surprise you will like. Progressive provides small business owners with 30 customizable coverage options to help keep their business going strong. So go ahead, surprise yourself. Get a quote in as little as 8 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates and third-party insurers. Coverage is not available in all states or for all vehicles and coverage selections.
We all belong outside. We're drawn to nature, whether it's the recorded sounds of the ocean we doze off to, or the succulents that adorn our homes. Nature makes all of our lives, well, better. Despite all this, we often go about our busy lives removed from it. But the outdoors is closer than we realize. With AllTrails, you can discover trails nearby and explore confidently. With offline maps and on-trail navigation, download the free app today and make the most of your summer with AllTrails.
Hello, I'm Sarah.
I'm Toby.
And welcome to the Whispering Woods Haunted. In tonight's episode, we're going to
Somerset.
Yeah, I don't even know why I said tonight, but there we go. We are going to Somerset. We're going to Sidcot in Somerset and a couple of places in the same area. I said aerial because where we're from in Bristol, you got to add an L to everything.
Yeah.
That's what Grandad Cocker used to do. He'd say, Cyril. Boop, boop. All right, so we're going to that aerial. Okay, so I've got a story about a particular guy in Sidcot, and then I've got a few more ghosty stories to finish it off. I'll get straight into it now. Are you ready for the stories?
Yes, I am.
Sidcot is a small Somerset village near Winscombe, England. where the lanes run between old cottages, hedges and fields, and where the Mendips hills rise close enough to make the landscape feel older than the houses standing on it. In the late 18th century, Sidcot was a village full of working lives, plain speech, worship, weather, animals' sickness, harvests, births and burials. The old Quaker meeting house stood there, sober and still, and across the lane was the cottage where George Beacham lived with his wife, Joan. To anyone passing through, it might have seemed like an ordinary Somerset household. But in local memory, George Beacham was never remembered as an ordinary man. He was known as a cattle doctor. That sounds simple enough now, almost practical and harmless, but in a rural community in the 1700s, the person who knew how to treat a sick animal could hold a strange sort of power. Livestock was not just property. It was food, money, labour and survival. A cow that stopped giving milk, a horse that went lame, a calf that sickened for no obvious reason. These were not minor inconveniences. They could change the fortune of a household. And when ordinary remedies failed, people turned to those who seemed to know the hidden workings of illnesses and cure. Men like George Beacham stood on the edge between usefulness and fear. They might be called for when a beast was taken with some wasting complaint, when the milk soured, when an animal refused to eat, or when a farmer began to suspect that something more than sickness had entered the byre. They knew herbs, old preparations, words passed down from mouth to mouth, and perhaps little rituals that were never written plainly in any book. A cattle doctor might be respected because he could heal, but he also might be feared because anyone believed to know the cure was never very far from being thought to know the cause. In that world, medicine, magic, and religion did not always sit in separate rooms. A charm might be muttered over an animal in one cottage, while prayers were said in another. An iron object might be kept close to turn away evil. A hagstone might hang near a doorway. A horse brass, a rowan twig, a Bible verse, all of them could belong to the same landscape of protection. People did not necessarily think of these things as a contradiction. They lived in a world where the seen and unseen pressed close together, where the devil could be feared, God could be invoked, witches could be blamed, and cunning folk could be called upon when something in the house or field had gone wrong. And this was the world that gathered around George Beacham. In Sidcot, he was not only remembered as a man who treated cattle, he was remembered as a conjurer. The old accounts dress him in the shape of folklore. They give him a red cap. They put a staff in his hand. They speak of books of magic. Perhaps these details grew larger after his death, as details often do when a real person becomes a village legend. But they tell us something important about how George was remembered. He was not simply the man who came when an animal fell ill. He was the man people believed had knowledge ordinary people did not have. He belonged to that uneasy tradition of the cunning man, the one who might cure a spell, break a charm, find what was hidden, or name the unseen thing that had crossed a threshold. Across England, and especially in rural districts, cunning folk were often the people sought out when official religion felt too distant and ordinary medicine had nothing more to offer. They were not always seen as wicked. Sometimes they were protectors. Sometimes they were healers. Sometimes they were the last hope of the desperate. but they were rarely entirely comfortable figures, because the same power that could be used to bless might also be imagined as something that could blight, and the same man who could lift a curse might be suspected of knowing how one was laid. So when George Beacham walked the lanes around Sidcot, people may have seen a neighbour, a cattle doctor, a working man with a household and a trade, but behind him came the other George, the one preserved by memory, the conjurer in the red cap with the staff and the books. That George was harder to put in the ground. By the summer of 1788, George Beacham was dying. The cottage across from the meeting house must have grown quiet in the way houses do when death is waiting inside them. The usual sounds of work would have softened, voices would have lowered, people would have come and gone, and somewhere in that illness, George is said to have made one final request of his wife. He did not want to be buried in the churchyard. For most people, burial in consecrated ground was the proper end. It placed the dead within the keeping of the church, among the neighbours and kin who had gone before them, beneath the eyes of God and within the boundaries of Christian order. But George Beacham, the cattle doctor, the conjurer, the man remembered with magic books and a red cap, asked for something else. Some versions say he wanted to be buried in his own garden, close to the cottage where he had lived, among the ground he knew, and perhaps among the ordinary things of his own life. Others say he asked to be buried at the 4 crossroads, where the lanes met, and where he could watch the people passing by. The crossroads belongs so naturally to folklore that it almost feels inevitable. Crossroads have always carried a strange weight in old stories. They are places of choice and uncertainty, neither one road nor the other, spaces where direction breaks apart and reforms. In folk belief, they were sometimes linked with the restless dead, suicides, criminals, spirits and bargains, with those who did not quite belong within the churchyard and could not be left entirely among the living. To ask for a burial there was to ask for a place outside ordinary order, a place on the edge. And according to the story, George gave his wife a warning. If she did not do as he asked, he would trouble her. There is no need to make that warning grander than it is. It is frightening because it is plain. Not that he would haunt the whole village, not that he would rise from the grave in some dreadful shape, not that he would bring ruin upon Sidcot, only that if his wife ignored his final wish, he would trouble her. Then George Beacham died, and whatever fear his words had carried in that cottage, his request was not honoured. He was taken from Sidcot to Winscombe churchyard and buried there in July 1788 in the consecrated ground he had asked to avoid. The churchyard received him, the earth was closed over him, and John Beacham returned to the cottage across from the meeting house. For nearly a year, nothing seems to have happened. The seasons turned over Sidcot. The lane outside the cottage dried in summer, muddied in rain, hardened under frost, and softened again. The friends continued to gather in meeting. The cattle went on needing care, though George Beacham no longer came when called. Perhaps people spoke of him in the way villagers speak of the recently dead, half in memory and half in mourning. Perhaps some remembered the red cap and staff. Perhaps some remembered the deathbed words and wondered whether the conjurer had accepted the churchyard after all. Then came Wednesday, 22nd of July, 1789. It was almost exactly a year since George had been buried. That day, the Quakers of Sidcot were gathered in their meeting house. sitting in the quiet stillness of worship. A room full of people waiting in religious quiet, with a lane outside and Widow Beacham's cottage nearby. Then a woman came running in. She was frightened enough to interrupt the meeting, and the words she brought were strange and urgent. The disturbance was not in some distant farmhouse or half-ruined place out on the hill. It was close enough that the men in the meeting house could rise from their seats and go straight to it. John Benwell and Charles Strode crossed the lane to the cottage, and when they entered, they found the ordinary interior of Widow Beacham's home transformed into something wild. The household goods were moving. Chairs and tables shifted about the room. Pots and pans were thrown down or sent clattering where they had no reason to be. The things that should have been still, the plain domestic objects of a widow's life, seemed to have been seized by some unseen force. A kneading trough rocked violently, and then came the thing that made the story unforgettable. From upstairs came the sound of George Beacham's boots. They came down slowly, clattering step by step, as if the dead man himself had returned to the cottage in the shape of the things he had once worn. The boots belonged to a man who had been in his grave for almost a year, and yet there they were, descending into the kitchen of the widow, who had buried him in the place he had not wanted to lie. By the time the meeting had broken up, more of the friends had come across the lane. Among them was Hannah Benwell, daughter of John Benwell, who would later remember being inside the cottage during the disturbance. She said that a heavy armchair moved slowly across the room, and that she had to step out of its path as it passed. The haunting was not only heard from outside or passed along by one frightened widow. Others came. Others saw enough to remember it. The news travelled further than the village. Hannah More, the writer and reformer who lived at Cowslip Green near Rington, heard of the strange affair and came to ask about it. A clergyman, Mr. Jones of Shipham, came as well. The story had become too curious, too unsettling, too firmly attached to real people and a real place to be ignored. Widow Beacham lived on for several more years, and the cottage does not seem to have become the scene of repeated nightly terrors. There is no long tradition of George appearing at the foot of the bed, no procession of later witnesses seeing him at the crossroads, or a tale of his red cap moving through the lanes after dark. The haunting came once, almost a year after his burial, and then it was gone. George Beacham's wish had been ignored. While the Quakers sat in silence just across the lane, his widow's cottage erupted into movement. The goods fell about the floor, the furniture shifted, the kneading trough rocked, the armchair crossed the room, and George Beacham's boots came slowly down the stairs. So when George warned his wife he would trouble her, he kept his word. But George Beacham's story does not stand alone. The country around Sidcot is threaded with older tales. A few miles in almost any direction will take you into another story, and some of them belong to the same old world of folk belief, where the devil could trouble a hilltop, stones could move after dark, and the dead might remain close to the places where their lives had ended. Not far from Sidcot, on Bamwell Hill, there is a story of a cross that could not be raised. The hill is ancient ground, with the remains of an old hill fort and wide views across the surrounding country. According to local legend, the villagers once tried to set up a great cross there, a Christian sign placed high above the land, but each night something came against it. The story says but the devil came in the dark and blew it down. Again the people raised the cross. Again by morning it had fallen. The villagers were determined to mark the land, and something in the night refused to allow it. This tale belongs to the same older Somerset world of protection and defiance, where crosses, charms, and consecrated places mattered because the darkness was not thought of as empty. In the end, the villagers found a way to leave the sign where it could not be blown down in the same way. If the cross could not stand safely above the hill, then it would become part of the stone itself. They carved it there, fixed it into place, and Banwell kept the memory of a hill where the devil was said to have fought against the cross. From Banwell, the old stories lead towards Shipham, where another strange thing was said to move after dusk. Near Shipham is the Wimblestone, one of those ancient stones that seems to belong as much to folklore as to the land. By daylight, it could be seen on the hillside where it's always stood, fixed, silent and weathered. But by night, according to the old story, the Wimblestone was not still at all. It wandered. When darkness fell over the hills, the stone was said to leave its place and roam the country. It travelled across the darkened landscape to visit the Waterstone at Rington, and there it stopped to drink, before returning to its own hillside before morning. It's not a ghost story in the usual sense, but it has that same feeling behind it. The sense that a landscape wakes when people sleep, and that things which seem fixed and harmless in daylight may have another life entirely after dusk. There is something very eerie at the thought of a great stone stirring in the night, moving over the hill paths and fields, while the villagers lay dark beneath it, keeping an old appointment with another stone hidden somewhere in the folds of Somerset. Then there is Axbridge, only a few miles from Sidcot, and old enough in its own right to have gathered several hauntings around its streets and buildings. One of its best-known buildings is King John's Hunting Lodge, a timber-framed house standing in the square. Among the stories attached to it is that of a ghostly tabby cat seen padding around the first floor before vanishing as suddenly as it appeared. The same building is also linked to the figure of a woman, sometimes described as a white lady, or an Elizabethan lady, seen seated in a chair. She's not remembered for shrieking or rushing toward anyone. She's simply there, already occupying the room, as though the living have stepped into a place that still belongs to someone else. Elsewhere in Axbridge, another haunting belongs to George House, where a red-coated soldier carrying a musket has been seen. Nearby, footsteps have reportedly been heard pacing, giving the impression of someone still on duty, still guarding, still crossing the same piece of ground, long after the reason for doing so has disappeared. But perhaps the darkest Axbridge story belongs to Shoot Shelve Hill, also known as Hanging Field. According to local tradition, the ghosts of two men and a woman linger there after a murder and execution. The story tells of a woman and two men condemned for the murder of the woman's husband, and of their spirits remaining near the place where punishment took them. And Somerset is full of places like that, quiet lanes that seem ordinary until you learn what once happened beside them. Hills with old names and older stories, stones that were never quite only stones. Taken together, these stories make this corner of Somerset feel crowded with the dead.
Ever notice how life's best stories don't happen in your living room? They happen on the open road, out on the water, or parked under the stars. At Progressive, they get that you want to focus on the experience, not worry about the what-ifs. That's why they offer quality insurance designed for your ride, whether that's a boat, RV, or motorcycle. Adventure with confidence. Visit Progressive.com and see how easy it is to protect your favorite way to get away. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in D.C. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Summer weekends are all about family, sunshine, and making memories together. Before everyone arrives, I stop by my local Total Wine & More to pick up a great bottle. Maybe a favorite we already love or something new to enjoy with dinner on the patio. Find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly. Must be 21.
I love the way he bothered E.
Yeah.
This is another one that I found in a clip from the old newspapers. And that is exactly how he said it. I'll bother E. And he bothered her, didn't he?
Yeah.
He
didn't stick around.
No, he disappeared for a year and then he came back and bothered her. Bothered her something rotten. Poor thing. I love that story. It's great. Really loved it. Because I just thought, I wonder why he wanted to be buried not in consecrated ground. Maybe he sold his soul to the devil. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting and I loved it.
Yeah, very good.
You bury me at the crossroads, Tobias, or I'll bother ye.
Yeah.
I don't want to be buried. You just got to flutter me out to the wind. Okay?
Or just chuck you in the wind.
Just chuck me out in the wind. Yeah. Somewhere nice, obviously. Yeah?
Now, what you got to do is put it in a bottle with a note. If you find this, then put me back in the water because they're travelling the world.
Yeah, that's the only way I'll do it.
Yeah.
Isn't it? In a bottle.
What you want to do. Well, that's in this episode. I hope you enjoyed and we'll catch up with you again soon.
We will indeed. We'll catch you again tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Goodbye.
For a small business owner, every day is full of surprises. Some great, some not so great. Like when a client cancels their order at the last minute. But here's a surprise you will like. Progressive provides small business owners with 30 customizable coverage options to help keep their business going strong. So go ahead, surprise yourself. Get a quote in as little as 8 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates and third-party insurers. Coverage is not available in all states or for all vehicles and coverage selections.
You've got social dialed in. Search is doing its thing. So why do your marketing results look the same as 6 months ago? That's because you're fishing in the same pond as everyone else. Podcast listeners are a different audience entirely. More engaged, harder to reach through traditional channels, and ready to act when someone they trust makes a recommendation. We're Acast, and we put them right in front of you. Browse thousands of the world's leading podcasts, book host reads or run your own ads, and track every conversion in real time. Same skills you already have, brand new results. Acast. Acast.com/advertise.
The stories told on the Whispering Woods are inspired by historical records, witness reports, and local folklore. While every effort is made to research and represent events accurately, some details, names, and locations may differ from official accounts or have been changed out of respect for those involved. These episodes are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes and should not be considered definitive fact or investigative journalism.